Hey guys, welcome to the Doghouse Podcast. Huge game this week. Georgia versus Alabama in Athens. Can Georgia exercise the demons and finally beat Alabama? Kirby 1-6, 1-9 in the last 10. We talk about that with a great return guest, Alex Taylor from the Bama Factor. Also, we talk about the 9-game conference SEC schedule and the 3 annual foes that were just announced. Make sure to like, subscribe, share the Doghouse Podcast. That really helps out. Doghouse Podcast is back. Big time matchup. I think this is going to be, even though it's not game day, but game of the week. Alabama on the road against Georgia. Got a great return guest, Alex Taylor from the Bama Factor. How are we doing today?
I'm good, Trey. I just got to say, I always appreciate, you having me on here. And, just like you said, the matchup doesn't give it. It doesn't really get any better than this. Alabama, Georgia has kind of become a staple, over the last decade or so. So, we should be in for, yet another classic. It's always a classic when Alabama and Georgia play each other.
Oh, yeah, really appreciate you coming on and connected with Alex from the College Huddle. It's a great community. Yeah, first I wanted to – there's so many parallels, so much history going into this. I guess I wanted to ask, first off, I know Alabama, tough loss against Florida State, but you guys look great the last 2 weeks. And you guys, everybody's going to talk about Kirby, 1-6 against Alabama, 1-9. Where's the Alabama fan kind of feel about Georgia? I know we just came off a overtime win over Tennessee, and I know they probably hate us because we won 9 straight and they got so close. I actually felt like that was one of those we should have lost that game but somehow find a way to win. And I always feel like we've kind of been in that against Alabama, so I just wanted to kind of see the mindset of the Alabama fan, kind of how they see Georgia, because, we've been so close, but you guys have always, won and dominated. So just kidding. How you guys kind of feel on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't ever, discount Georgia at all because, especially since Kirby's been there and, even prior to Kirby being there, from a standpoint of just, obviously like myself, you kind of alluded to, it was a tough loss, Florida State, for us to start the season. And, the last 2 weeks, we kind of brought back the intensity and, we changed a few things that needed to be changed. And we just got better all around, albeit, the competition or so. But, one thing that impressed me about Georgia, against Tennessee was, obviously, they're always going to be a resilient team, that's for sure. And, you can't ever you can't ever count out Kirby and the Dogs. Honestly, because, we saw that last year, when I was sitting in Tuscaloosa and, we're up 28-0 and, everything's, on top of the world. And then, for all of, 13 seconds, the Dogs come back and, they storm back and they take the lead. But I think that's the point of, I think players on each side know that, there's a respect, for the other guy. And, the same thing with the coaches and the fact that this is always going to be, just a sledgehammer of a game. It's going to be a heavyweight, like just the total matchup, it's always going to be like that. Georgia hits, Alabama hits back, Alabama hits, Georgia hits back. And, it's just who lands that last, really gut punch, to the other one. And, sometimes it's gone, if you look in 2020, Alabama came back and really dominated in the second half. If you look at the 2021 title game, Georgia really took a close game into the, late third quarter or so. And then, Georgia just really dominated the fourth quarter. So, but, overall, from my standpoint, Georgia is definitely, I still think they're a team kind of like Alabama trying to find who they are and, trying to see, what's our identity? And, Alabama's at that point as well. And when you get to a game like this is sort of like, kind of what I'm kind of prefacing this game as is this is kind of where you start to find your identity type of game. Who are you going to be the rest of the year? Because really, let's be honest, this game for each of these teams, is kind of really the measuring stick of, how the rest of their season is really going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. It's always heavyweight battle. It's just Georgia has come close, but you guys always find the way to win, and That's why you guys were there. Did want to ask. So last year, the whole story was coming into it. Hey, was it a Saban problem?
Mm-hmm.
And then after it, I took at it. Caleb DeBoer first year, and you guys jumped out to that big lead. We tried to rally back, even though if you really look at it, I think we were like 5 for 5 on fourth down. We were just scraping and clawing, just trying to get back in the game. If we didn't get those extra downs, I just think we were never really in it. We clawed back in it, but you guys could kind of make a big play and punch us back and knock us back down. And we were resilient and came back, but to me it was just desperation going on the fourth downs. And I think you guys even maybe the board would probably never do it. Let the foot off the gas. If you guys would have been a little more aggressive, it never would have been a game. But going back to what I was trying to say is it ended up being it was Alabama problem. So I don't know if it's a mental hurdle for Kirby. He sees the A and they just react differently. So I'm kind of seeing that on our end. If we lose this one, that's 2 straight. And now the big thing is first time in the Kirby Smart area is Alabama visits Athens. So that's going to be the whole narrative is everybody's like, all right, if you don't get him this year, when are you going to get Alabama? And then I know we have the 9-game conference, which I was going to ask you about here in a little bit. That kind of changed. So anyway, kind of like if we don't get you guys this year, win. And I think it's more of a mental hurdle is kind of where I'm going to it for us against you guys.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama kind of dealt with that, for a few things too. And, it was weird, if you go back to even, 2015 through about, 2018, for Alabama, it was, even though they kind of split the series with Clemson, it was kind of like that, as well. They kind of had like a mental hurdle to, come over as well. For a while, they had a mental hurdle with Ole Miss. I mean, 2014, 2015, they lost. And then in 2016, we go to Ole Miss and we turn around and then we're down 24-3. Granted, we came back and, we just really just an incredible comeback there. And, very thankful to win that game. But, for that 2 to 3 years, we had a mental hurdle with them. And I think overall it's because, I mean, yeah, just to allude to you, and actually to give a little preface of, what I saw from, my perspective at the game last year, first and foremost, one of the most intense games I've been to. I've been to over, 70-plus Alabama games, a lot of them in Tuscaloosa. By far one of the loudest crowds. I sat in the upper deck. That's where our seats were. So I actually had 2 Georgia students sitting by me and a whole lot of Georgia fans kind of sitting in my section. And, they travel especially well. But had a great conversation with them the entire game. We were just talking ball and, we jumped out 28-0 and, they were just, telling me, they're like, we can't even say anything. We're playing bad right now. It's like, y'all are just, really going on all cylinders right now. It's just, I can't say anything. And, when they came back and, took the lead, they were happy. And I remember I'm sitting there and for all the Georgia fans, I guess you can blame this guy here because he's the one that called it. I'm sitting there with my, we've got, 2 minutes and 34 seconds left. And, I'm sitting there, in the impending kickoff, wondering how did we just squander this lead? And, we're down by 1, I'm sitting there and Georgia fan puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, "Number 2 for y'all hasn't caught a touchdown tonight, has he?" And I said, No. Yeah. He said, "I think he's due one." And then I went, "Oh, I hope." And then the next play, it happened in my end zone. And just to give a little perspective, when that play happened, I thought Jalen Milroe underthrew him, and I thought Humphreys picked him off. So because from my angle, I'm looking at he's throwing towards me. And when he threw that, I thought he underthrew him, and I thought Humphreys picked it off. But then I threw my hands on my head, and then I saw that he didn't. And then when Brian sprinted and did the spin move, my jaw dropped. And then when he scored, I stood there from after he scored to the extra point to the impending kickoff with my jaw open. And I didn't say a word. So much so that the guy next to me, the Georgia fan, asked if I was okay.
Right.
And again, I've never seen, a game that crazy. And again, the Georgia guy looked at me and said, "There's nothing you can really do about that." He said, "That's just an athlete. That's just a freak athlete." And, but I think from a standpoint is that it could be mental, but the question that you're really hearing all week is, when will Kirby and Georgia exercise that specific part of Alabama? I mean, yes, they beat them in 21, but then a lot of the Georgia fans are saying, like, yes, that felt good. It ended our title drought. But then these next 2 times we've lost to them again. It's like we can't build a consistency thing here. And, kind of like Tennessee and Georgia. I mean, like Tennessee, close this past weekend. And, kicker had all the confidence in the world. He missed, gave Georgia a shot. I mean, so, and again, and it was with Tennessee with us for years, in which, I mean, still, they beat us, 2 out of the last 3. But, I mean, for 15 straight years, we beat them. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, I think when you look at it, Georgia's got to exercise that side of the demon there. And with Alabama, it's not making the moment too big. It's already a big moment. Like we know going into Athens, it's at night. I mean, the rumor is a blackout again. So, I mean, so, I mean, for each side, it's just going to be like, you don't need to make that moment bigger than it already is, because if you make it too big, then that's when, all the nerves and the anxiety starts to, really play into it. And, overall, these guys have just really got to go play, honestly.
I hope it's not a blackout, because we still have memories and demons of 2008. So Kirby's never really big. He's had the blackout before, but it'd been lesser games. So I'll be a little shocked. I know he's looking for extra juice, but he's not really big on, hey, we got to put colors or uniforms to make some juice. I think he's like, hey, if you're not all in and excited about it, make a play. I don't know why'd you come to Georgia? I think he's on that. But hey, never know. But I'd be shocked if he did. But there's always that chance. Before we get into the big time preview and matchup, I want to get a shout out to new sponsor. This will be the first time doing this. So it's going to be crafted by John. John reached out on Twitter, and we connected. I think it's a great product. So it is flags, and it's not just a flag, by wood crafted, really great product. Here's one of it. It's great for patriotic and other type things, but it takes 10 to 14 days, and it's just a specialty, and he's got some really good traction on it. I think it's a great product. I'm excited about bringing him on. And, just want to give a shout out here. And I'm going to put his link down, handcrafted by John, to take a look. Really great product, all different types, sizes, great for collegiate. And I think it's just a great product. Yeah, check it out below. And we're going to have a partnership and want to get some good traction here. So, check that out below. And also wanted to share a picture as well of, I think we have a Alabama flag here too, which is kind of cool that he crafted. Let me find that here. There we go. All different type sizes. There we go. Alabama Crimson Tide, made out of processed wood, and really great product. 10 to 14 days. And reach out below is the description, and hopefully that'll be a great partner. And then Alex, looking at it, it's I think it jumped a little bit since I know we're off a bye week, but 2.5 point spread, I believe, currently. And just wanted to get on the matchup, what you're excited to see, maybe some advantages and disadvantages, and maybe even how healthy Alabama is coming in off the bye week. Both teams coming off the bye.
So for me personally, with Alabama, the huge, I guess, really, the glaring news that we got, starting tailback Jam Miller is obviously going to play. He's completely 100% healed. He's good. But, again, that kind of goes into my –
he had that tightrope surgery? Not to interrupt you. Was it tightrope?
No, he had a dislocated collarbone, but he didn't break it. It was just dislocated. Okay. So it was a small, not even really procedure type thing. Could have played last week, actually warmed up against QLM as well. So was fully dressed and warmed up last week as well. But again, could have played, but didn't really need him. Giving some of these other guys an opportunity, and, we've seen some guys get some really good playing time there. Tim Keenan had tightrope surgery. Tim Keenan, and that's another one. So really the anchor of the defensive line, team captain, him coming back, the highest graded DT, by the Pro Football Focus, in the preseason, on many of the on a couple different watch lists, preseason All-American as well. So, getting him back, I look at guys like, Deontay Lawson, Quay Russaw, and, those guys are good. And, Lawson's your signal caller in the middle. But I think the heart and soul of your defense is Keenan. And, he's that captain. And, Lawson's a captain as well. And, not to discount him or anything, but, Keenan is that guy who, provides the energy. Keenan's that, that spokesperson. He's that alpha dog on that side. So getting those guys back, Ryan Williams kind of had, his coming out party against, Wisconsin, had a really good game and, kind of got healthy there. And, just some other guys getting healthy too, who were just kind of dinged up to start the season. But as far as I know, from all the reports that I've heard from insiders, Alabama's coming to this game, 100% healthy of the guys, who are, available. And, getting those two guys back are huge. And, for me, I think the bye week came at a good time because, after the Florida State loss, I'll be honest, I haven't felt that low as an Alabama fan since we lost to Louisiana Monroe in 2007. And I still felt lower then because that was a horrible day. I was at that game. That was horrible. But that day, just knowing that we were the more talented team, and what got me was the lack of effort, and it wasn't the lack of skill. It wasn't the lack of talent. It was the fact that we weren't showing effort. We were dead. There was no adjustments, and it's just, we went away from what worked in the first quarter, and, it's like we didn't want that anymore. And it's like we needed to, find that intensity again, and we needed to, clean up some things as well. And, the next week, we had a lot of other, pretty much every other team, really discounted the fact. He says, oh, you people are happy that y'all beat, ULM, 73-0. And I said, considering the game that we had to start the season, and you turn around, I don't care like who it's against, you turn around and you have a performance like that, you responded to, adversity. That's your next game. Doesn't matter who it's against. And then, with Wisconsin being a Power 4 team and, having better athletes, obviously, to come out and do what we did there, and, to really take care of them as well and still kind of build off of that. But, to get guys healthy, to get, overall, just the intensity we've seen, from the team again, kind of getting back and, finding that identity and, guys stepping up. And I really think that loss to Florida State was, as horrible as it sounds, coming from an Alabama fan, I think that could have been a blessing for Alabama. You start the season, at least you're figuring out what you got to work on and you got to address quickly at the beginning of the season instead of getting halfway through the season and you're pretty much, you've had all this success and then you're dead in the water. So, that's kind of what happened to us last year. We kind of got to that point of where, came off that Georgia game and then, then obviously we go to Vanderbilt and do the unthinkable. And, then we beat South Carolina, then we go to Tennessee and lose, and then we shut out Missouri. And then you go against where you say is your biggest test left against LSU, and we go and dominate. And I'm like, okay, we're back to where we need to be. And then 2 weeks later in Oklahoma, we go lay an egg again. So I think having that early season loss and having that these guys step up and having these guys grow, I've seen it. I've seen it in their attitude. You've seen it player specific. And that's what I'm really excited about is that now the struggles we have had in the last year or so has been on the road. So, again, one of the more hostile environments in Georgia. Can we perform well on the road? When adversity hits, how are we going to respond, or are we just going to react to it? I think that's what Kane Womack was saying earlier in the week. We've reacted a lot to adversity. We haven't responded to it. He said, so we got to respond on the road. Like if it does hit, we got to come – instantly again, and we've got to hit again. So so that's what I'm excited about. I think that that bye week did us well, and I'm really stoked about the opportunity for it.
Yeah, all great points. It looks like you guys are fully healthy, which we always want the best you guys can have. Yeah, in Georgia, coming from our end, I believe from some of the reports, Ernest Green's a little banged up. Not really sure about Juan Gaston. Have to maybe wait for Wednesday. He's the big lineman everybody's excited about. Some of the worries on our end is got torched 391 yards in Tennessee. They were throwing it all around, got a lot of explosive plays, gave up 41 points. And you guys might have the best receiving core, or at least one of the in the SEC with Ryan Williams and Bernard. So we definitely, hopefully they made some adjustments. There'll be that. And O-line's an issue. And then we got to somehow get pressure on Ty Simpson because he's 9 touchdowns. I think Kirby even said, I don't even think I saw the ball hit the ground in the last game. So he's hot, even though he's athletic, but I don't believe he's explosive like Milroe was because he always gave us problems. But, I mean, you got to still, respect his athleticism. So that's what we're worried about. And then, you are getting Jam Miller back. So that's kind of where we're at. And, we are getting you guys at home. Like I said, I think what are you guys 2-6 in the last 8, which has been a struggle for you guys on the road. So that's another thing to look at. First time coming to Athens, and we do have the 33-game home winning streak. So all those will be interesting. So that's kind of where we're at. Even though Gunnar Stockton did grow up, because that was a lot of hand-wringing, worried for him to come into the Tennessee game is, can he throw it deep? Can he win a shootout? Because didn't look like that against Austin P. So there was that. So that's kind of where we're at. But definitely a lot of things to clean up on the Georgia end, but we'll see. But I think this is going to be, definitely heavyweight.
Yes, I think just kind of to your point of Gunnar Stockton and Ty Simpson, preseason, I know you probably felt the same way, but when I looked at preseason QB rankings for SEC that, came out on all these pages, and they had Gunnar and Ty, towards really the bottom half of the SEC.
Yeah.
I get, not a lot of starts. Ty hadn't started ever. Gunnar Stockton had started once. So, I mean, so I get like the tape wasn't there. But I think when you have to look at both of these guys' attributes and their athletic ability, and obviously you look at what Gunnar did against Tennessee, getting into a shootout, making a cold-blooded throw on 4th and 6 to London Humphreys. I mean, but then you also look at Ty Simpson, what he was doing against Wisconsin. I mean, standing in the pocket and, I mean, throwing it in between 3 defenders, putting it to where only his guy could get it. And then, went 17 of 17 against ULM. And then at one point, I think his stat, the 2 games combined, I think he was 32 of 33 at one point. So, I mean, just being accurate. I mean, making good decisions with the, knock on wood, we're the only, I think we're the only SEC team right now that does not have an offensive turnover. And so, we've taken care of the ball at this point. Last year, Jalen had kind of already turned it over a bit. But, we get to a point where, Ty's taking care of the ball. But, they had guys like Arch and, DJ Lagway and, Garrett and, Garrett Nussmeier, John Mateer ahead of these guys. And so I remember I commented on one of those things, and I said, you're going to see at the end of the year that, or even at the halfway point of the year, or by the time that they play each other, that Stockton and Simpson are going to be, I think, your 2 hottest in the game right now. Because, I mean, let's be honest, John Mateer this past weekend, Auburn, okay. I mean, DJ Lagway, I don't need to say anything.
Hurt. I don't know if you read, he just got hurt. He's out, what?
He did. And, I think he's out a couple weeks. Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, still kind of, he's a 5th-year senior, but he's still kind of making, rookie mistakes here and there, even though they're undefeated. Sellers is having a hard time. So, I mean, it's just, it's very I
think Joey Aguilar's got to be up there. He's been surprising.
Yeah, he has been surprising. But, yeah, I just think, they really kind of discounted, Ty Simpson and Gunnar Stockton both. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, Georgia fans definitely coming into the Tennessee game. I think they got more into him, even though I do have close season ticket holders that love Ryan Puglisi. But as you know, the backup quarterback's always very popular. But
yes.
Anyway, so Alex wanted to get your prediction. You're on the Budweiser hot seat, as they say.
Well, I'm just going to say this. Either way, this game, and, this is what I'll say on my show, this game is going to be won in the trenches. It's whoever's offensive line can, really get to establish that run. And, whichever defensive front, can generate some pressure and can really, really get some really good, sacks, tackles for loss, or just in general going to affect the opposing quarterback. And this game will be won in the trenches. I think it's going to be a fight. I could see this being, both Alabama and Georgia have kind of looked a little suspect on defense at times this year. So, it could be a shootout. It could be just a huge game. Or, it could be one where both of the defenses really lock in and it not be like, 2024, and, it could be low scoring. But if I'll give two predictions, if Ty Simpson does what he does and, he is able to deliver the ball, he's given time, these receivers are able to get open. We've got more than just, obviously Germ and, Hollywood, we've got Isaiah Horton now. We got a true freshman in Brooks, who's really exciting. We have Rico Scott, we have Jalen Hell. Our tight ends are getting very involved. I think we got one of the better tight end rooms that we've had personally in the last 6 years. So, if you get the run game going, we've got to really establish that. But if we can create some turnovers and, Ty can really kind of have that game that, I'm hopefully expecting that he is, I could see this, type of 27, 24 type game, kind of like a 2023 SEC title. But if we allow Gunnar Stockton to use, his athleticism and, to scramble outside of the pocket or, to get some yards or, specifically some big plays on, some QB draws, Alabama's had some trouble with, some quarterbacks that are mobile in the past few years. Georgia's got good playmakers, especially you have to respect Branch. I mean, he's a speedster. You have to respect Dylan Bell, Oscar Delp. Nate Frazier is a good back. The one that scares me is I can't think of his first name, but it's McCray, and he kind of worries me. I live in Geneva, Alabama. That's where my wife is from. Enterprise is not too far, and that's where he went to high school at. So,
Josh McCray from Illinois. He's transferred from Illinois.
Yes, so he worries me because 6'2", 240, hard to bring down. We saw that last weekend. Yeah, he's only got like 20 yards rushing on the year, but he's in the goal line situation, so he's going to score. But if that happens and we don't play our gaps right, we over pursue, we allow Georgia to basically march up and down the over and over again. If we don't tackle well and we do that, then Georgia could win this game. Like a 31 or 34-17 type ordeal, if we don't do what we're supposed to. So either way, at the end of the day, I want to say just the disappointment that we were given at the beginning of the year. I think I think we're prepared for a war. I'm calling it the war between the hedges, and yep. I don't think Georgia or Alabama is coming into this game saying, hey, we've won 33 straight at home, or hey, they've won 33 straight at home. I don't think that's any because if it's in any of the players like mine's, then it's going to be a distraction at that point. And you've got to put it out of your mind and just say you've got to go play ball. But either way, it's just whichever team is going to show up. And, again, it can be a blowout for Alabama. It can be a blowout for Georgia. It can be a close game for either one of them. And really it's just a coin toss. It's whichever one. Again, the trenches will decide this game here. Who can generate pressure? I know Alabama and Georgia's defensive fronts both have 4 sacks on the season, kind of taking a little bit for each of them to get going. So, offensive lines, us in the first game, we kind of struggled. Georgia's offensive line kind of been struggling too. So again, who breaks first? And when two really similar teams really collide, you're really gonna see who's gonna make the least amount of mistakes, and who's gonna take care of the ball. And again, as I say, just to reiterate, trenches is gonna decide this. So, but overall prediction, for Alabama, this could be that 27-24 type game, or, it could be, 27-26. I mean, it could be extremely close.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Yeah, from the Georgia end, I just think, one day you got to exercise the demons. Why not this year? You're at home. That place is going to be rocking. I hope the student section actually shows up because I know they were not well attended in the last couple of games. I don't know what's going on with the student section, but it's going to be 7:30 night game. Weather's going to be great. Looking ahead, I think probably 70, 71. It'll drop in the high 60s, so that shouldn't be an issue. I think it kind of comes back to what I always say is who wins the turnover margin and the rushing battle.
Mm-hmm.
And Gunner to me kind of reminds me of Connor Shaw, and he was recruited by Connor Shaw, and I think even in that Raven County, that kind of not the fastest guy, but he'll extend drives, get those first downs, almost kind of annoying, which is in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed he can sit back in the pocket and make plays. This team has him as a leader. There, he's all dog, as they say, and you can kind of see when he gets tackled, those linemen are going over there and picking him up. So he has the locker room. So I like that. We do have a running back by committee. I wish they would kind of maybe go to Nate Frazier, Dwight Phillips. We got Josh McCray, but you'll see a lot of rotation. And then
Same thing with Alabama.
Yeah, I hope he takes a lot of deep shots and gets Noah Thomas going. He hadn't gotten going yet. He's a big body guy from Texas A&M. Kobe Young, and get the tight ends going. And Zachariah Branch is special. He puts foot in the ground, man. He can make some moves.
Mm-hmm.
And if we got to get pressure on Ty Simpson. If he sits back there and picks us apart, we got some problems. And you guys got awesome receivers with Bernard and Ryan Williams. But I'm going to go close one. This is never going to be a blowout, in my opinion. But I like the crowd finally. And I like it's 34-31. And we got good special teams too. Peyton Woodring is a solid kicker. And Thornton, he can maybe kick you guys back in a hole. So I'm going to go 34-31 in a classic shootout. Get your bourbon, get your vodka, and drinking. This is going to be a liquor stress-free game, a liquor game.
Yep. It's definitely going to be good. A lot of talent on both sides. A lot of future NFL guys on both sides. And again, I know I speak for the both of us, but absolute shame that you go to game day of a place that has 0 combined national championships in the last 40 years, and not the place that has 8 combined in the last 17 years. So honestly, if it were me at the beginning of the season and I'm sitting down as the College Game Day producer, I'm saying no matter what, I don't care if Georgia and Alabama are both 0-3 at this point. We're going to Alabama, Georgia. We are going to Alabama, Georgia. And I think they got robbed of that. I think Athens got robbed of it. I know they were really looking forward to it. I got a couple Georgia friends who were saying, we got robbed. And I said, yes, you guys did. I said, because, we had it last year. And but we know good and well that, game day will be in Tuscaloosa sometime this year, probably Alabama, LSU, and, Georgia will probably definitely have one in Athens as well this year for sure. So,
yeah, I think that maybe came down. It was the higher ranked team.
Yeah.
But I was surprised too. I thought they were heading there too, but it is what it is. Maybe for Georgia fan, hey, less eyes on it, less pressure. Maybe
absolutely
more practice time than doing those interviews. But yeah, I was
that's right.
Yeah, and then Alex, I briefly wanted to check on, just ask a question. What do you think about the new 9-game schedule, and then the 4-year annual opponents? Wanted to get your
thoughts. Real quick, I'll just say because I'm short of time too, but kind of weird. Us with Mississippi State, I was kind of expecting LSU, but honestly, if you look at it, Alabama's played Mississippi State more than they played anybody. The Battle of Highway 82's back. I always enjoy playing those guys. I always love Starkville. But LSU and kind of threw some shade at some LSU people earlier this week. I said, well, good. I said, we save you the embarrassment every November now. Because, that's kind of another team that can't, get past the mental edge of Alabama. They beat us, twice in the last, 16 times they played us. So overall it's just but yeah, overall I think it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see it, and it's going to be great. So
yeah, Alabama's got Auburn, Tennessee, Mississippi State, and then Georgia's got Auburn, Florida, South Carolina. I think it's great that we get South Carolina back on the schedule because that was always a good border war, and we haven't played them the last 2 years. So great on that. Yeah,
absolutely.
And Alex, appreciate you coming on. How do we follow on social media?
Yeah, just Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at the.Bama Factor. YouTube as well, the Bama Factor with Alex Taylor, shows every week, but, the most active on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, just almost every day. So, just anything there. So,
yep, got his Twitter right there, the Bama Factor. Love the name, and he's really growing on YouTube as well. Got 255 subscribers. Mm-hmm. So check out the Bama Factor with Alex Taylor. Yeah, appreciate you coming on again.
Yes, absolutely.